Welcome to the Town of Bedford's virtual public input opportunity for the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Summary of Findings Report and 2021 Hazard Mitigation Plan Update. My name is Mary Kate Schneeweiss. I'm an environmental specialist with Beals & Thomas, and today I will be walking you through the process that has led us to this final report today, going over some of the topics that are covered in the report, and providing you with additional information that you can use to provide public comments. The Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program was established through an executive order by the governor to allow communities to plan for the impacts from climate change that would particularly have an effect on their community. This is accomplished through completion of the Community Resilience Building process, which is a public input and consensus building process developed in concert with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, the Nature Conservancy, and Mass Audubon to allow municipalities to leverage the input of key stakeholders into a customized action plan to address climate change and its potential impacts. The Governor's Executive Order 569 provided a track through which municipalities can be paired with certified providers who will facilitate the public input, data gathering, and research processes that will result in the final Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Action Plan. The Nature Conservancy trained service providers to be able to use the Community Resilience Building process, while the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs provided funding for municipalities to hire a certified provider. The municipality and the provider together complete the Community Resilience Building process and develop a final action plan. The municipality then becomes certified as an MVP climate community and is now eligible for awards to implement the action items identified through the CRB process. In addition to the funding that the town received to complete the Community Resilience Building process, the town also received additional funds to prepare an update to the 2010 Hazard Mitigation Plan. A hazard mitigation plan is approved by both the Massachusetts and federal emergency management agencies. Updates to this plan are required every 5 years, so the 2010 plan is out of date. This is important because an up-to-date hazard mitigation plan is required for municipalities to receive FEMA funding for non-emergency disaster assistance. This means that the town would not be eligible for funds to complete the action items that were outlined in the 2010 plan. As a condition of the update, the current hazard mitigation plan must address the natural hazards that are outlined in the Massachusetts Integrated State Hazard Mitigation and Climate Adaptation Plan, which includes additional hazards from those included in the 2010 plan. Hazard mitigation planning can be broadly defined as long-term planning, policy changes, capital improvement projects, and other activities that aim to reduce or eliminate the loss of life and property damage that result from natural hazards such as floods, earthquakes, and hurricanes. The Hazard Mitigation Plan provides a process through which communities can identify these action items that will allow them to mitigate for future occurrences of natural disasters. There is significant financial benefit to hazard mitigation planning. The National Institute of Building Sciences estimates that every dollar spent on mitigation can save between $4 and $11 in avoided losses. It also promotes the safety and welfare of the citizens of the community and cultivates a community commitment to mitigation. And a lack of hazard mitigation planning can lead to unnecessary losses to infrastructure and critical facilities, as well as potential human casualties. The Town of Bedford began the MVP and Hazard Mitigation Plan update process in July of 2019 when the core team convened to establish the approach. The first Community Resilience Building workshop was held in December of 2019. An initial public listening session was held in March 4th, 2020 to gather input on the actions identified through the Community Resilience Building process while the plan was being drafted. Plan drafting and finalization occurred between April 2020 and May 2021. We are currently in the second public input opportunity, in this time virtual, in May 2021, with the final report to be made available and submitted to MEMA and FEMA in June. To facilitate public comments, I'll spend a few minutes right now going over the various sections of the hazard mitigation plan that is available for public comment and some major takeaways from each section. The first section of the hazard mitigation plan provides an introduction to hazard mitigation planning and an overview of previous mitigation planning efforts that have been completed by the Town of Bedford, including the 2010 hazard mitigation plan, as well as the context for the 2021 update to the hazard mitigation plan. It also provides a summary of the goals of the hazard mitigation plan update, as well as the Community Resilience Building Workshop Summary of Findings report. Section 2 provides an overview of the planning process and public participation. As described previously, this was completed through the Community Resilience Building Workshop. The objectives of this workshop are to define extreme weather and natural and climate-related hazards, to identify existing and future vulnerabilities and strengths, to develop and prioritize actions for the community and broader stakeholder networks, and to identify opportunities for the community to advance actions to reduce risks and build resilience. The Community Resilience Building Workshop is divided into a series of large and small group exercises. The first exercise is for the large group to identify hazards that impact the community and reach agreement on the highest priority hazards. Then, the large group breaks up into several smaller groups to identify vulnerabilities and strengths unique to the community in the infrastructural, societal, and environmental fields. Then, a community action for each of these strengths and vulnerabilities is identified to bolster a strength or address a vulnerability. Then the small group prioritizes the actions, and the large group reconvenes to identify the top priority actions for the town overall. Section 3 of the Hazard Mitigation Plan is the community profile of Bedford. This provides an outline of existing land uses and demographic information for the town, existing planning efforts that the town has completed for context and for inclusion in future hazard mitigation planning, as well as potential future land uses that may be impacted by future hazards. Section 4 of the Hazard Mitigation Plan provides an overview of the 13 natural hazards outlined within the State Hazard Mitigation Plan and vulnerabilities that Bedford faces for these hazards. These hazards include flood-related hazards, sea level rise, average and extreme temperatures, drought, wildfire, landslides, tsunami, invasive species, hurricanes and tropical storms, severe winter storms and northeasters, tornadoes and microbursts, other severe weather, and earthquakes. The State Hazard Mitigation Plan further subdivides these hazards based on how they interact with climate change. These interactions with climate change include changes in precipitation, sea level rise, rising temperatures, and extreme weather. The plan also acknowledges where hazards are not influenced by climate, for instance, earthquakes. This section of the Hazard Mitigation Plan defines each of the natural hazards, identifies past occurrences of these natural hazards in Bedford, and summarizes potential impacts that may result from an occurrence of these hazards. Where possible, a financial estimate of the potential damages of an occurrence was provided. The Community Resilience Building Workshop identified the following hazards as the top hazards facing the town of Bedford: flooding and extreme precipitation, heat, drought, and fire, winter storms, and high winds and severe storms. Section 5 of the Hazard Mitigation Plan outlines the existing mitigation measures that the town of Bedford has in place. These mitigation measures were grouped into mitigation related to flood-related hazards, wind-related hazards, winter-related hazards, fire-related hazards, and geologic hazards. This section of the Hazard Mitigation Plan also summarizes mitigation measures that may address any of these hazards at once. Section 6 of the Hazard Mitigation Plan provides an overview of the goals and objectives of the hazard mitigation planning efforts. Again, to reiterate, these are in concert with the goals of the community resilience building process, which include the identification of top natural and climate-related hazards, identifying existing and future strengths and vulnerabilities within the town, developing a list of prioritized action for the community to take against climate change, and identify immediate opportunities to collaboratively advance planning actions to improve resilience in the town. Section 7 of the Hazard Mitigation Plan provides an outline of the potential mitigation measures for the Town of Bedford. These mitigation measures were ranked in terms of high, medium, and lower priority actions within the societal, infrastructural, and environmental categories. The ranking was accomplished in the Community Resilience Building workshop. The top 5 actions identified in the workshop were to assess and construct redundant underground electrical system and microgrid at town campus under the control of the town, to develop a town emergency communications plan and identify the most effective means to reach vulnerable populations, including residents with economic, language, and physical barriers, to continue to identify vulnerable trees and perform proactive maintenance, encouraging utility companies to continue tree maintenance programs to identify and monitor vulnerable trees along overhead power lines, to review and update the town's comprehensive emergency management plan, and to coordinate with downstream communities and other planning commissions to manage rivers and streams, conducting maintenance of hazard trees along riverbanks, and developing and implementing a proactive beaver management plan. The action items identified in this section of the Hazard Mitigation Plan may be available for future MVP action grants once the Town of Bedford receives designation as an MVP climate community. The MVP Action Grant provides monies for municipalities to address climate change with planning or construction projects that are identified as high priority through the CRB process. Some example projects in the previous round of MVP Action Grant funding include a vector-borne disease control program in the town of Uxbridge, a regional stormwater wetland construction project in the town of Lexington, and various resilient critical infrastructure projects in the town of Newburyport. But before the Town of Bedford submits the list of action items to EEA to become designated as an MVP climate community, they are seeking public comment on the Community Resilience Building Workshop Summary of Findings and Hazard Mitigation Plan Update presented here today. The presentation materials and a draft of the report is available at the address displayed on the screen. Comments can be received through the end of the day on June 15th, 2021. They can be submitted to Jeanette Rebecki, the town's transportation manager and MVP point of contact. They can be submitted in writing to her email address, jrebecchi@bedfordma.gov, or by calling 781-918-4274. Once all the public comments are received, those comments will be incorporated into the final summary report and hazard mitigation plan. This report will be submitted to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for certification as an MVP climate community, as well as to the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency for review of the hazard mitigation plan. MEMA will review the hazard mitigation plan and provide comments prior to sending the plan to FEMA for final review and comment. Once all FEMA and MEMA comments are received, the Select Board in Bedford will vote to adopt the final plan. From there, the town will be eligible to submit MVP action grant applications, as well as have improved eligibility for other grant programs to address the action items outlined in this report. We are very thankful for the public's input on the various action items that we've summarized herein, and we look forward to any comments that you may have. Thank you very much.